All right, hello and welcome to the Crackdown episode 26. Today we have Kaiser on from MADLIONS. Obviously, everyone's been hyping this guy recently. Recent winner of the mid-split MVP, which honestly I didn't even know that award existed. I guess that's a new thing.
Let's talk about that a second. Is that actually even a real thing? Do you actually get a trophy or something for that?
Not really, no. I think it's just I think the casters voted for it or something. Or like
did they actually pick like one person, or like I saw there was like 5 people nominated or something? Did they pick you in the end?
Yeah. I think they picked me, and the 5 other people were just like I think honorary mentions or something maybe.
Right. Okay.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a real thing though, is it? That's the problem. Like if it was a real trophy, fair enough. All this is like, I don't know why they've even done this, Dom. As far as I can tell, isn't this what exists in every sport? It's like race to the MVP in it. So unless you win it at the end, who gives a fuck?
Honestly, the way I see it is this, man. Like if they're gonna fucking give rookie of the split to people in NA when we have like 2 rookies, mid-split MVP is way more fucking important than that shit. So I'll take mid-split MVP. I mean, obviously MADLIONS has been pretty much dominating the LEC. I mean, there was a couple losses. Personally, I mean, I know that Fiddlesticks as a champion is just unbeatable. I've been trying to say it for a while. So, you guys losing that one, I give you guys the pass. And then the first game against G2, that was before, they started combusting or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But, I mean, you guys have actually been dominating this split. You guys started coming up last split. For people that don't know, MADLIONS was just pretty much a new team, bunch of rookies coming into LEC, 4 rookies and Humanoid, who is only in his second year. And a lot of people didn't know how you guys were going to perform. You guys ended up, taking like a pretty good placing in spring. I think you guys placed 4th or 3rd, actually.
Yeah, I think 4th.
3rd overall.
Okay.
Must be 3rd.
Yeah.
3rd overall, but I think 4th in like the actually regular split, right?
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck about that? No one cares about that. Listen, a lot of people came first in that split and never won the split, mate.
Oh, no. Oh, no, I'll take that. Team Liquid first in 2015. Yeah, first in 2015. Yeah, just one LCS, we'll take it. But on a more serious note, I mean, most people have been pretty impressed by your team's progression, and there's been a lot of talk about whether it's just like you guys are insane players, like your coaching staff has been getting traction. I mean, Peter Dunn is known for putting these teams together. And yeah, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like how you guys view your success and like where it came from. Were you guys really that raw coming into LEC? Like when you started scrims, was it like, oh, you had a bunch of mechanics, but you guys had no like idea of how to play the game on that level? Or did you think that your players were just really strong and you guys just hadn't had the opportunity to shine in LEC yet?
Well, I think coming from the national leagues, I think we are like already pretty good players, like on a mechanical level, like all of us. Like we are probably like the best in our roles on a national level in EU at least. But I think like we actually went to Canada and we scrimmed some NA academy teams, and like some LCS teams, and we got stomped almost every game. And,
by LCS teams.
Yes.
Oh,
and that was a wake-up.
I heard it was the same in Europe. I heard in Europe some of the LEC teams just were wrecking you early in the first scrims, basically.
Yeah. I mean, like the start of the scrimming was like really, really rough. I think I heard like even Merrick, like Humanoid, say like he was really worried that we would be like 0-18 by the end of the spring, But like with time, like our coaching stuff, like they're like really insane at teaching stuff and just like having a plan on like what to teach. For example, we like always had like a week. We had a like plan on what to they had a plan on what to teach us next, right? Mm-hmm. And we could just gradually get better like every week. Like we fixed our problems, and because we already like we have some like pretty good mechanical players, right? Like once we fixed our macro mistakes and like once we got like smart about the game, I think it just like clicked with us as well. Like I think our synergy in the team is also like pretty good, so that helped us like learning quickly and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that helped us a lot.
One thing I think never gets mentioned actually is it's bizarre is that obviously you and Shadow played in past teams, mate. So actually, you think about it, if the jungler and the support have pre-existing synergy, that's better than being 5 brand new players just thrown in the mix. Like, have you always had a good relationship with him in the game?
Yeah, I mean, me and Shadow were like pretty good friends on Mouse already, and like once he came in, like we kind of like had like a pre-existing synergy. Like we always used to like walk together everywhere, kind of like I was already like picking up this roaming playstyle, like picking up these engaging champions in mouse spots. Like people say always that in mouse spots we like played these, I don't know, disengaged champions, but I think that was kind of wrong. Like I think we used to always engage and like play aggressive, and especially with Shadow, like a really high mechanical jungler or like a really good mechanical jungler, we could abuse other mid jungle support duos. I think. Because we just used to roam around the map, like kill everyone, kind of, because we just outplayed them, and like, that basically worked really well for us. And this pre-existing synergy from mousebots, like, really like helped us, kind of speeding up the process of like just playing as a team, right? And I think jungle support is one of these synergies that are like really impactful for the team, because like where your jungle and support is kind of your strong side, right? And if your jungle support is like clueless about the game and like they're bad mechanically or something, then your AD carry all of a sudden is like pressured by the enemy jungle or something, can't farm, right? And if your AD carry is behind, then he can be faker on AD carry, he still cannot carry the game, right?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of you and Shadow coming into the LEC, it felt like you guys were just Rakan Lee Sin every single game. Like anytime the Rakan Lee Sin were up, you guys picked it. And no one else was really playing as much Rakan as you. It was almost no one was playing Rakan at the time. And it was pretty much, it felt like Rakan was only being played with Xayah, where you guys were just playing it with whatever. I mean, MF, it didn't matter, the AD carry. Were you ever worried about playing these like highly mechanical, demanding champions against better competition? Because most of the time when we see supports come in, they're just like, all right, just fucking stick me on Braum and Tahm Kench, and I'm just going to like do my job. Whereas like Rakan and Lee Sin, you guys have to do so much throughout the game. Like, was that ever like something that was like a mental barrier for you, or were you ever like unsure if it would work? Or like, how did you feel about playing such difficult champions on such a high level?
On stage, yeah, like a real match.
yeah, I mean, of course, like at the start, we always had like these, how do you say, a bit of stage fright was there. But I think, especially once you're in game, I think I had that like even when I was playing in the German league, every time you went in game, you just blocked out everything and you just played your game, kind of like. Yep. I don't even notice the crowd anymore and stuff like that, right? When you're in game, you just focus at your screen and you just play like your champion, right? And especially because of that reason, I think that allowed us kind of to just play our champions that we wanted to. Like for example, the Rakan, the Lee Sin, right? We always had these champions as a comfort pick, and I think like picking comfort especially is like one of the most important things as well as a rookie, because I think if I was like playing Tahm Kench or Braum in my first game, I would just go 0-6 every game and just int it, right? But if you play comfort, like you know, like your champion's limits and stuff like that, then you will perform for sure better. Like sure, it takes it like puts the burden of doing stuff on you, right? Like you have to take some responsibility for your team because you're like the engaged stuff like that. But I always like played that and I always liked it, so I didn't see like a reason why to change it, right? So.
Yeah.
Here's the weird thing, right? Normally, if someone's in their second ever split, the conversation's supposed to be, if they had a good first split, like, was the first split a fluke? Like, are they a legit player? Will they be like an established player going forwards? You know, was it just their meta that was good? I don't know if you've seen this, Kaiser, but have you actually seen that, like, on Reddit and Twitter, etc.? People actually call you the best support player in the world.
Wait.
That's not a joke, for real.
Yep.
What?
Yeah. Well, I have one more.
Yeah.
I have one more. So ESPN did a ranking of all the teams in the world. They do like their world's rankings. Did you see this by any chance?
I saw it.
Okay.
I mean, okay. So every time we see another ESPN world ranking list, we always like try to laugh at it and like stuff like that, because I mean, honestly, like it's just ridiculous that we are like rated as like the second. Yeah. I mean, of course, like. You can't take it seriously, right? Like I don't think we are like ever at the point yet where we can call ourselves like second best team in the world, where we haven't once played an international game, right? We are only playing in LEC right now, and I mean the LEC or LCS games at the start didn't count, right? But like the scrims, but yeah, I mean I think like LPL teams are looking insanely strong right now. Like there's like I think like 3 or 4 which are like really strong. Have like insanely mechanical players, like they have good macro, they have pretty good understanding of the meta, and I think saying that we are like better than LCK teams, better than like
Yeah.
I mean, so the top LPL team is a bit ridiculous.
I mean, you have to realise, like, if people don't know, first of all, literally the purpose of those lists is to get discussion. That's the whole point of doing those lists, is power rankings, etc. Yeah. It's supposed to basically be that everyone's supposed to argue no matter what. Like the joke is, even if it was like number 3 should be number 2, people will fight to the death over that as though it was like the end of the world. So first of all, that is kind of the point of those lists. Secondly, if people don't know, if you do a power ranking, you actually can't take into account what Kaiser just mentioned there. You can't say, well, this team's never played internationally, so I can't rank them at high. It's a power ranking. Like, you have to rank the teams that are the hottest in the world as the best in the world. So at the moment, like Cloud9, for example, will always probably be higher than anyone from Europe thinks, because everyone in Europe goes, we haven't got anyone good to play against. It doesn't matter. That's not how power ranking works. Like, if they have some insane streak of like 8 games in a row with no losses, they're going to be really high up on a power ranking. But what I'll say is this: the team angle is less interesting for those reasons. Like, until you play, it doesn't really mean anything. But on the player angle, the reason I bring that up is that's such an extreme contrast. Like, to be in the first year of your career and have people actually legitimately put you forward as best player in the world in your position, that's insanely unique, especially for support role, dude. It's normally all the classic players who are the supports. You know, the people who've been like a top support for like 4 years. That's normally you do it by being like the brain guy, the captain or something. Well, like, even though, like, obviously I'm not saying, are you the best support in the world? It's like, it's a subjective consideration. But what do you think about the fact that you're at this position so quickly, though? Because it's somewhat legit, right? If you're in the best team in Europe, Europe's supposed to be the best region, or at least a contender. You've looked like one of the absolute best players on your team. Like, it's not a totally unreasonable setup, right?
I mean, of course, like, if people think we are like a top tier or like top 2 team in the world, then people will think some of our players are top 1 or top 2 in our
Makes sense,
world as well, right? But I believe that for sure, like, I can compete with like LPL or SEK supports, right? But to call me the best is like a bit, how do you say, a bit too early, I think, because I think like the reason why people call me like really good so early is because we as a team play. Yeah, I mean, mechanics counts in as well, right? Because I play like some standout champions like Wukong or Pantheon, right? Where you can just carry with them, right? Usually supports play Nautilus or maybe Tom Kench or something. You can't really. Yeah, exactly. You can't really look good on them, right? But since my team allows me to play stuff like Wukong, it just looks like I just look better, right? And I mean, I have to credit my team for that as well.
That's a weird way of saying it, Kaiser. You go, since my team lets me play stuff like Pantheon and Wukong, like, I go the other way, mate. I go, you let your team play fucking Pantheon and Wukong. What are you talking about? Like, the other supports aren't even picking real fucking meta supports. You're playing all of them and the fucking niche picks. Like, that's props to you, not your team.
I mean, that's true, but the thing is, like, I've seen a lot of AD carries. They are just reluctant to like troll picks, I guess, because they always want to play with Nautilus. They always want to play with Leona. Sure. I mean, Kazi is kind of the same, right? Like, he's always a bit reluctant when I like try to forward my pike or something, right? But I think he was really open to change, I guess, because when I like proposed the Senna Wukong, he was always like, yeah, sure, let's try it, right? Let's try it in solo queue, see if it works. And this time it like just worked, right? Especially into immobile AD carries, it was looking really strong, and we played it in scrims, and it was always like working insanely well. And like we just got better at the strategy as well, because like, and Kazi at the start he was just at warding, right? He was like farming my minions, stuff like that, right? And he always like forgot, oh shit, I shouldn't take cannons, maybe, stuff like that, right? But as we got better, as I coached him a bit. Aroma and Humanoid, they coached me a bit with like side laning, stuff like that, right? Kazi coached me a bit with like manipulating the wave in our favor, stuff like that, right? It was a big team effort, and I think we managed it really well.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely something that I wanted to ask you about, specifically the Senna Wukong. Like, did you see that in solo queue first, or did it actually just come from you, where you were just like, I think this could be really strong? Like, Wukong is super OP right now. Senna is like a good like support AD carry, etc. to pair with it. Like, was that completely your idea, or did you see it somewhere else first?
I mean, I was just like looking for combos and looking for flex picks, kind of like, because Wukong was already kind of flexible into jungle and top lane, right? But Wukong jungle was never really the most broken lane, I guess, right? Like, if someone picked Wukong jungle, no one really cared, right? They just like said, oh, sure, whatever, right? We just play our OP, I don't know, what is it really broken? Volibear or whatever. Yeah, exactly, stuff like that, right? You just take it, right? But if you can flex it into like a bot lane where they actually have to be scared of it, because your Ashe or your Aphides or your Varus just cannot play the game against your champion after 6, then that becomes like a really scary pick, right? and I just thought of like some champions that can like farm bot lane. Like we thought of like other picks with Senna as well, right?
Yeah, the Viger. I saw your interview where you were talking about running Senna Viger, and you just inted every single game with Senna Viger in scrims. And that one just didn't work out. You guys just dropped it after a couple games, or what?
Yeah, I mean we were like stomping a bit in solo queue with it, so we thought maybe it could work in scrims, but of course like they just gank you a couple times and then you're like useless, right? I think Wukong is like a bit different in that direction, I guess, because he can always block hooks. For example, like most supports right now are just hook champions, right? Not just thrash, stuff like that. And you just block their hooks with your W, and you can escape like any gank, right? Like if Senna plays a bit more passive and stuff like that, you're really safe, right? And most other bruisers or like most other champions that can play with Senna don't really have that security or like safety. So they don't really work as well. So I thought just Wukong was really strong because he didn't really have any downsides, I guess.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to jump in quickly with is we talked to you briefly before we started the show, and you talked about actually watching NA. You actually watch a lot of NA, and people have started bringing it out. C9 brought out the Senna Wukong a couple times, and it looked a little bit different than like how your Senna Wukong looked. I mean, in EU, it felt like, you know, Senna Wukong, you guys would just go even or even have like pressure in certain lanes. But in NA, how it's looked so far, at least when Cloud9 played it, is, you know, the lane falls super far behind, but then the usefulness of having a Senna and Wukong like in the mid game kind of like band-aids that CS deficit that you might have. Do you think that like other people just don't play it as well as you, or do you think that that's just like the natural direction of the lane, or maybe it was it that when you're in EU, people were respecting you guys so much because you're a top team that you're like able to get away with better CS deficits than you probably should? Like how exactly do you think this lane should be played out, like versus things like Varus Bard and some of like the poke lanes that we see it into?
Well, I think the fake can never be as good as the original. I'm gonna say that that much. But I mean, of course, I think like me and Kazi are like one of the best bot lanes in the West. So I think we for sure know how to play out the lane into our advantage, and I think we know how to like manipulate the wave. So it's like always on our side. Like we cannot be ganked, we cannot be poked, right?
Yep.
I don't think it's like necessarily the enemies respecting us so much. I think it's just not really possible that much because we had D-Shield, we had second wind. Senna has like a lot of healing as well, right?
Yep.
And they actually also have to respect our all-in threat early game because Wukong with Conqueror is actually like really strong in early all-ins.
Yep.
So I'm actually not sure. I think like I watched the Cloud9 game. I think they played with Sven on Wukong actually.
Yep, Sven on Wukong, Vulcan on Senna.
I don't really like actually because I think if the support can play Wukong, I think he should always play Wukong because the AD carry is just usually a better Senna, and also the Wukong has to have like this sense of engaging, and like usually AD carries don't really have that like instinct. I think I saw Sven actually popped off in his first game, I think.
Yep.
Like he was finding really good flanks and stuff like that. Like he was pretty smart about it. But I'm not sure about the second game. I think they kind of got stomped, I think.
Yeah,
not sure though.
And then last question I want to ask before we jump off this topic is, so you used to be a mid laner, right? Like a while ago. I think you said you transferred over when Rakan came out, so that was probably like mid-season 7 is when you started playing support. One thing that I thought was super unique about your Wukong is like you had such a good idea of like TP flank engages, which is that's the part when I look at a support playing a Wukong that I would not expect them to be able to do because you're not used to playing with TP. Like supports pretty much never run TP in general. Do you think that that's just like because you played other roles previously, like you have a better idea of some of those concepts, or like why do you think you got so good at finding all these like flank engages? Is it a team thing? Like how does that really work?
I mean, I think it takes for sure part of it because, I mean, of course, I was playing a bit of solo queue, top lane in solo queue or mid lanes, stuff like that. And like TP has been meta for like how many seasons? I don't know, like 3 probably, stuff like that, right?
5 years.
You cannot ever like take any other summoner spell, maybe cleanse, right? But and of course, but that's not the only thing. I think we as a team kind of like we had some weeks where we just focused on TP flanks, and I as a support. Like I have to ward, right? So I always have to look out for TP flank wards and stuff like that. So that indirectly like helped me get better at flanking as well, right? Or like and at like looking for TP flanks, right? And like especially like I think Rogue or something. Like we had a pretty good idea on what we want to do, like how we wanted to play out team fights and stuff like that. And then we just like said, yeah, if you can ward here, I can TP flank if they contest Drake. We just go, right? And I think we have pretty good plans around that. And I mean, like of course, like there's like it's not only me planning this stuff, right? It's like a team effort as well. So yeah.
Right, since when we were talking before, like obviously one of the things that's gotten you some acclaim this split has been these off-meta picks that you've been able to work as well. Like another factor that I want to discuss with you is two parts. One, this is actually something which I noticed, I mean, there was no MSI, but around the time when there would have been the MSI, was actually one of the points that people made, for example, as to why like the Jingdong team won the LPL was like basically the big difference was they had all the support counter picks. And so as a result, they could always get like extra strength in their bot lane. Right, so there's two factors I wanted to ask you about here. First of all, you at the moment have had them all. Like that's one of the reasons I think people have put you forwards in this elevated status individually is you've had like the widest champion pool basically of anyone playing your role in the West. And then secondly, that's actually not as easy as an advantage to integrate as people might think. Because one thing you said earlier, which I think is quite interesting, because I just put an episode out today with Perks and Upset, who are obviously ADC players. And one thing they agreed on as well is that the weird thing right now about the bot lane is there are so many combinations possible of not only like lanes, but then matchups that go into each other. And in fact, if you look at the draft at the moment in Europe, first round rotation is always the pick of an ADC. It's basically like it defines the whole draft now. So I guess you were saying with Kazi there, even if you yourself play all these weird picks, doesn't mean the ADC wants to play like a different lane that he doesn't play that often. I assume most ADCs are like the old school mentality, like you try and be awesome on 3 ADCs and then you just pair whatever's strongest with it, right? Like the old way of playing the game. So the game's kind of different right now, right?
I mean, I think the reason why people are mostly picking AD carries in the first rotation is because there are like 4 strong AD carries right now.
Broken.
I think like yeah, exactly. Like there's Kalista, there's Senna, there's
Ashe,
Angel, there's Aphelios.
Ashe, Ezreal, Aphelios, yeah.
Yeah, I mean Ashe is like kind of a IPL pick, I guess I would say, because like it has a strong laning phase, right? But it's really vulnerable. Like I think you saw it in the G2 game against Origin. I think he just could not play the game at all after some time. And I think like that's why mostly EU teams are shying away from it, is because like it's just too vulnerable. Like if Aphelios is immobile, like I mean sure, like you can say like Aphelios is immobile, right? But like if you get mini range of him, he just one-shots you, right? Ashe just like doesn't do anything, right? So I think Ashe is like a weaker version of like most other AD carries, but I think like right now there's like 4 strong AD carries, and if, for example, like mostly like some teams ban like Senna against us, like they ban like Kalista against us, and if you don't pick your AD carry in the like for example Ezreal or what is left, Aphelios, right?
Aphelios,
if you don't pick these AD carries, then they will just ban it in second rotation, and what do you have left, right? Like there's Zyra Khan maybe, or like Kaiser, I guess, but those AD carries are like not as broken, right? So you kind of want to secure your broken AD carry as soon as possible, and then you're like, fine.
Yeah. I mean, what about like the other picks that could potentially come out? I mean, Syndra bot. I mean, I know it got nerfed slightly, but people are still playing it. Like you have Syndra bot, you have things like Yasuo that have completely disappeared. Like, how do you feel about those picks' viability? You think it's just not worth it to ever give up one of these broken AD carries? Because that's like kind of what I was getting into with the Ashe into Aphelios. It seems like there's certain matchups that like, so maybe Ashe isn't as strong as the other ones, right? But a lot of people view Ashe as like a soft counter to Aphelios. It's like, oh, they get Aphelios, we get Ashe, and like we can at least play the lane phase, or like they get Ezreal,
it basically is the LPL's pick. Like that's basically what they do when they have to play against Aphelios every fucking game.
Yeah, I mean LPL even like, I mean for some reason I mean Aphelios is higher prio than Kalista and Senna for them, but I mean of course it's like also like team style preference, where like for example late game teams like for example Origin or whatever, or like I would say Rogue even, they would always prefer Aphelios because I mean Rogue has not been preferring Aphelios over Kalista, I think, but it's for sure an option for them, I think, because like it's just a good scaling AD carry, right? And if you want to scale and not snowball early game, then it's for sure like always better than Kalista or like I mean even Senna, right? Like Aphelios is just the best scaling AD carry in the game. So you kind of, if you can secure him and scale to late game, then you're always just winning. But I think like the off meta picks are kind of difficult to execute. I think, for example, Syndra is just really strong mid lane as well. Of course, it's like really good. I mean, but the thing is like there's sometimes just no reason to flex it, right? Because like Syndra mid lane is kind of it doesn't really have any counters, right? So why would you ever pick a bot? But of course, like for example, I think Syndra bot lane was played into our fears and stuff like that. We even played it, I think, against OG in some games where we just played as a kill lane, right? I think you can for sure still do that, like especially if some AD carries are banned, or like you just want to like play something else, or like some mid lane pick is like really broken here and you just want to flex it bot lane, right? So I think like teams are like trolling anyway if they give you Syndra, like especially against us. Like
doesn't she even seem like the ADC? Like I know people obviously when Perks used to be a mid lane, think, oh, it's going to be amazing. Like, it doesn't even seem like you have to be that sick a player on the Syndra when it's in the bot lane. Like it just works in the matchups, right?
I mean, of course you have to still like play it decently. I think Syndra is like not the easiest champion, especially because it's so immobile, right? It's like a immobile mage, and you will always get like engaged on. Like you're always a high priority target, but it's for sure like really difficult to play against for the enemy AD carry, because like you just outtrade them on every occasion. They can't really like do anything against you. They can't really stop your pushing. So I think it's still like really strong.
Yeah, to get back to like the original point, so you think it's more just about the AD carries being so OP rather than like supports being like heavily counterable? Because you know some people in NA at least, you can, if you talk to some of these supports, they're like, oh well, if you pick Braum and they pick Bard, it's unplayable, or if you pick like Thresh and then the other guy picks Tom Kench, well, it's unplayable for the Thresh. Like you don't see the matchups being like that vulnerable, or it being like support being that heavily counterable.
I mean, I think like some supports are for sure like heavily counterable. Like you don't see anyone blind picking Braum, right? So I think that's like pretty int. But you see like Nautilus blind picks, you see like Leona blind picks, you see Thresh blind picks. I think like most supports are actually pretty blind pickable right now, because like most of the strong counters are like not really that synergistic with the most meta AD carries, for example. Like I think for example Blitzcrank used to pop up all the time against Thresh, but I think it's like not really that useful against with like Ezreal and stuff like that, right? I mean, of course you can still play it, right? I think Kulisang, if he plays Blitzcrank, you have to always be scared, right? But yeah,
I'd be more scared if he picked someone else. Oh, you didn't mean for his own team, right? My bad.
Yeah, I mean he was looking great on Blitzcrank.
You just let him to pick it if he wants to. Let's be real. He's got to.
I mean he has like some other picks, right? But his Blitzcrank was always pretty good. But yeah, I mean I think that's like mostly it. I think there's always value in counter picking support, especially if you have like a good AD carry matchup. But I don't think it's like that important. Like not as important as, for example, top lane or mid lane counter pick.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, since we started going into like some of the other supports in EU, I mean, there's a couple different discussions we can have. One of them is the DOS versus Denick one, which we had with Mickey, I think last week or maybe the week before. But yeah, DOS versus Denick. You know, Denick was the guy that early on in spring was getting a lot of hype with you, as like you guys were like the two rookie supports that were starting to shine in the region, especially when they were having that big run in the beginning of spring. And then, you know, DOS has looked relatively mediocre. We talked to Mickey last week. His opinion was pretty much that he thinks Denick is overall just a better player. In lane, out of lane, doesn't matter. I wanted to just know, like, since you play against this guy obviously too, how do you view like the strengths of both of those players? Do you think it's weird that Misfits ended up going with DOS over Denick? Like how you view that whole comparison there?
I mean, since I've never played with either, like I don't really know what they bring to the team, like communication-wise, right? Mm-hmm. But I would imagine that I think like I saw some streams of Denick and he seems pretty vocal. So I would imagine that he's like doing some of the shot calling. I think Razok even said that in an interview that okay. I think Denick was like shot calling a bit more. So I'm not really sure, because I think like Denick and DOS are kind of comparable for sure, like in lane. I think DOS for sure plays the lanes more aggressively, but that's not always necessarily a good thing, right? Like that's why maybe he's like sometimes inting a bit, right? Because he just tries to always go aggressive, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, like, I think Denick is for sure smarter in a way, because he kind of understands the map better, and he knows, or like he sets his engages like more how do you say?
There's like more like planning in his engages or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think I think that's like just the thing, right? I think in lane, I think they're kind of comparable strength wise, but I think out of lane Denick is like for sure a bit smarter.
Yeah.
This is one of the things I want. Did you have a question specifically about that topic, Tom?
No, you go for it. Go for it.
Fair enough. Right. One thing I want to ask about though is like this is where I always find some narratives are really lazy. So like the two classic ones that everyone used to spam 24/7 last year was like if anyone in North America wasn't as good as Team Liquid, well that doesn't matter because Team Liquid has all the best players and just buys everyone good. And the European equivalent of that, Kaiser, was this. Well, of course they can't have as good players as Fnatic and G2. They've just got all the best players. Cue every fucking analyst shitter just going, oh, I'll just put all of G2 as my all first team players. Oh, get ready, guys. I'm really smart. I should get paid for this. All second team, you're not going to believe this. Mainly Fnatic. So at the end of it, you just think, why? You may as well have some fucking robot doing Mad Libs doing your job instead. Then again, that might be more funny than some of them. So here's the point I was getting to, Kaiser. Is supposedly in your region, you're not supposed to have a chance to be the best. Like Hylissang and Mickey X are supposed to be untouchable gods who are like the best in the whole world. Forget just Europe. So what have you thought about this split? Because it feels like both have had their issues this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hylissang especially are more so than Mickey. I think Mickey has been performing like decently, I would say, because I mean, of course he has like some troubles with like AD carry swapping out and in, like Perks.
Sure,
like
he gets consideration for that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, like if I had to lane with Humanoid for like one split, I would also like not look as good as some other supports, right? So I think that's for sure like a factor in it, and like Perks with his like drama as well, like not drama, but you know,
just all this stuff in his life,
yeah,
yes, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I think I don't think that G2 is like bad or anything. I think they will just pick it up again once like they just get back in track, kind of. I think because of the losses and stuff like that, I think they're taking the games more seriously. They're taking practice more seriously, probably. And I think they will just bounce back again.
I mean, that's the thing is like, I guess now it's just getting a little bit scary for G2 because it's like, when are they going to bounce back? Because we're already through like the majority of the split. And, you know, they people thought that like when Perks came back in, that this was going to be the week where they really bounced back. You know, like he took his week off because of like the mental stuff that he was struggling with, came back and, you know, he looked kind of out of sorts. I mean, the Ashe game was pretty rough. Admittedly, it's a hard Ashe game, etc. But it seems like everyone gives G2 this pass, right? Where they're like, oh, they'll pick it back up, they'll be good again. Whereas like you look at teams like Fnatic, and everyone thinks Fnatic is doomed, even though Fnatic, I think, I'm not sure, is Fnatic tied with them, or maybe they are one game up?
Fnatic has more wins than them, yes.
Yeah, I think Fnatic has one more win. But in G2's defense, or in Fnatic's, I mean, I don't want to like say that they're really bad, right? Because I don't think they're like beyond all the savings, right? But like, have you seen their Misfits games? Have you seen their Vitality game? Right.
Yes.
That is not pretty, you know. And I think they should have not been 6-5. They should have been 3-8, right? Yeah. And I think if they lose these games, I think everyone will just like shit on them even harder, right? I mean, they're already getting flamed a lot by like social media, right? But I mean, the way that they're winning games is just not pretty, right?
The Misfits game for me is a loss. Like, any time you're behind 10k gold, I just don't think it's winnable. Like, I guess they ended up
especially because Misfits did so much of what helped them get back in that game. It wasn't like they just did 10 godlike players in a row. If they did that, fair enough. But like, Misfits basically did, like, they got the assist for that fucking win.
I mean that's a great point. Like I think I said the same to my teammates as well, that it's not really Fnatic like playing well, right? They're not really setting up any like, I mean, they're not doing like death pushes and like they're just walking in or something, right? They're just like walking up mid lane. The enemy like AD carry like dashes in, you know, like maybe it's unlucky, but you know they just give the win, right? And I think that's not really like how you will win against LPL teams. That's not really how you will win against like even us, right? So. Yeah, I mean, they definitely look bad. I mean, on that topic specifically, on Fnatic, what do you think the problem really is? Because as a whole, it looks like they've just lost like their ability to have any type of synergy, you know, like, but before, you know, you saw like a little bit of like synergies in game where it's like, oh, Hilly would like roam well with the team, and they would get like, you know, like even if Hilly had like an death in lane, he would be able to roam mid, get them ahead. Fnatic had the synergy mid between Nemesis and Selfmade, and now it just looks atrocious, right? Like those Kha'Zix ganks mid in the Misfits game, it literally looked like they did the same thing 4 times in a row, and every single time Selfmade got Azir shuffled into the turret and like either died or had to burn flash. Yeah, it was ridiculous. So, I mean, what's your opinion on their issues? I mean, it's really, really hard to pinpoint. I think like every like loss or like win kind of looks different in a way, because like sometimes it's Hylissang just running it a bit, or like he's just getting caught out somewhere, or like he's engaging at the wrong time. Yeah,
He's
I mean when
running
he ins, he re-ins, but like he, of course, like he's always been like a bit inconsistent, right?
Yep.
But in playoffs, he's always like gonna be. I mean, I'm not sure if it's gonna be the case this time, but he was always like really consistent in playoffs, especially for example against us. He was just smurfing on me. So maybe he picks that up again, but I think Hylissang is just a bit too inconsistent right now. I think like Nemesis also like took a bit of a, dump in performance, I guess, or like because I'm not really sure what happened, because like it's usually like this kind of meta that suits him, right? Like these control mages like TF, right? He was always really really good on them. But I think he's just, I'm not sure, like he's just getting caught out sometimes, or like maybe it's like communication, right? Like people getting caught is like because they think I don't know, that the jungler is on the different side of the map or something, right? You can never know with these kind of mistakes, right?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we've been asking is, so there's 4 teams that are going to Worlds from EU this split, and it's a really tight race. You know, I mean, Origin was looking pretty bad, but in this last week with Jack Troll, they looked a lot better in their games. Like most people assume G2's going. At this point, you guys kind of get credit that you guys most likely are going to go. But there's a lot of teams that are up in the air, right? Like so in that mix, you have Rogue, which people are hit or miss on, Fnatic, G2, Misfits, etc. Like Origin. Who do you think out of all those teams that look like they're in the race for Worlds, like who do you think is most likely going to go from EU based on like your evaluation of strength of teams right now?
I mean, right now I think Rogue and OG are like looking pretty good. I'm not sure like how strong OG exactly is, because I'm not sure. Actually, did they have the easiest schedule? Actually, they had G2 and Misfits, right?
Yeah, they played G2.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess they're looking pretty strong. I'm not sure if it's gonna be like this like for the rest of the split as well, because like everyone's saying like maybe they have like a honeymoon phase, right? Where Jack Troll just came in, they swapped their style. Maybe some other teams have to just like get used to the Jack Troll style now, because like they're a bit more aggressive, right? They're trying to change their playstyle a bit with Jack Troll coming in, and like they're also changing like their support champion pool, right? So I think once people get used to it a bit more, I think they will fall off a bit. But I think that they're for sure looking stronger. I think Rogue. I'm not sure what to like say about them. I think Vanda and Larsen especially are like just really smurfing it right now. Yeah, I mean they're just basically the pillars of the team right now, and maybe people figure out how to beat that kind of like duo, I guess. Because like Larsen, he always seems to be like, I don't know, like flame horizoning the enemy mid laner. He's just farming on side lane until he's level 18, and then he just like stomps one team fight and they end the game, right? I feel like that's been the case for like almost every Rogue game, and I mean I'm not sure like whether teams are just like too bad to punish it, or like they just don't know how to, or like yeah, I'm not sure, but I think they're looking pretty strong as well until maybe teams figure out how to beat that.
So I want to ask you about that, actually, Dom. What do you think of Rogue? Because I've noticed almost everyone we asked except Kaiser actually nearly always either puts Rogue in the category with the OGs, Misfits, that were like maybe they can grab the last spot, or people just disclude them entirely. But the record, like you're saying, the record's fantastic, and if you look at their strengths, they look really good right now. So is there a reason why you don't put them in your group automatically?
I think Rogue is most likely. At this point, I'm pretty sold on Rogue and MADLIONS. I mean, the reason is, even though Larsen does look like he's kind of like a one-trick in playstyle, the thing for me is he seems like he does it on every champion, right? You give him Azir, you give him Orianna. We saw the Rise game that he played. Like, he can play anything, and when he plays it, he's just winning lanes super, super hard, and he's just like a pillar for the team. Finn has always been an issue for me. Like, I've always been worried about Finn and his, like, potential consistency issues. I feel like he's the weak point. As I feel like with a lot of teams in EU, I feel like top lane is the weakness, which we can get into later. But at this point, I mean, what are they? They're 10-2 right now, I believe.
9-2. 9-2.
Oh,
like they have the same score.
Okay, yeah, 9-2, same score as you. Oh yeah, because you guys have played 11 games. That's actually so weird to me, but
because of the super week thing.
Yeah,
super week and week 1.
Yeah, the 1-3 game super week because you guys are only playing 8 weeks. I don't know. Anyways, so 9-2, really high standings. If I were to say like 4 teams that I think we're gonna make it, I would probably say, and I know I'm probably gonna get flagged for this, I actually feel like Fnatic will pick it up again just because they always do, you know. So it's like Fnatic, G2, Rogue, MADLIONS would be my 4. So I mean, we went into all the teams individually, but that's what I kind of wanted to get out of Kaiser. Like if he had to bet on these the top 4 teams, I mean the 2 teams that are also I guess in the conversation that no one really talks about are Misfits and SK. Like those teams theoretically could have a chance.
You want a stat you might like? Here's a fun stat for you. Right? Here's who Fnatic's beaten this split. They've beaten Excel. They've beaten Misfits twice. They've beaten SK once, and they've beaten Vitality twice. That's their 6 wins. Notice any good teams in there? I sure as fuck didn't. I noticed all the bombs in there.
Yeah, I mean, SK, and even if you think
about it,
remember,
they would have lost one of those Misfits games as well.
Two.
It's bad right now.
2 of Misfits and 1 of Vitality.
And
here's the thing. OG basically has the other way around. OG might have lost a lot of games as well, but they've beaten all the fucking good teams. They've beaten G2 twice, beaten Fnatic. Like it's one of those ones where record isn't everything, but like that's pretty startling, the difference between the 2.
And then also, I'm pretty sure the Fnatic versus SK game, that was the game where Crownshot just walked mid and into the whole game under mid tier 1, where he walked directly into the Syndra Nautilus and
maybe another one.
Okay. Yeah, so they could be like 2 and 9. It could be fucking but
we're not making up the conditions here. Like it just looks bad for Fnatic right now. Like I know what you mean, Dom. If you look at the players, you feel like surely there's got to be some way to make this lineup work and win a bunch of games. Like surely you can at least just get to the playoffs and all that. But like I don't know. The problem is, like we said earlier, G2 have way better excuses. Like they have real excuses. Like someone had to take time off, some role swaps, like a bunch of different things. The problem with Fnatic's case is they don't really have any good excuse. Like they have the same fucking lineup the whole year. They've had their coach now a split in a half. They started off actually half decent. Like didn't they win the first 4 games in a row? The split or something like they have no excuses, Tom. That's the problem. Like the only excuse is they're just playing bad at the game. So I know what you mean. Like in theory they should be able to pick it up, but that's why I feel like this is exactly the time. I personally don't think they will because there's just too many. Like basically, you not only have to get better, you almost have to just stop losing entirely. Because look how many teams can steal these best of ones from you now. Like literally 5 or 6 teams can steal one from you. So you almost to this point, this is why last year, you know, when they started the spring split, like 1-7 or whatever, the reason why it was actually pretty reasonable to say they're probably just done for playoffs is because you had to win like 80% of the games from then on to make it. You didn't just have to get better. You had to basically become the best team in the league, which fair play, they almost did. They were like the 2nd best team in the league. But I think to ask that kind of turnaround now, if they can do it, mad props to Mithy, but I feel like it's a bit too late now.
I mean, the thing is, like, the positive thing about them is, like, that they are 6-5 right now, so they are actually not in a bad spot. I think. Yeah,
they're in a decent position in the rankings, yeah, sure.
Like, for example, with Rogue as well, right? Like, I think even if they fall off, I think they have a pretty good chance of making Worlds, just because they're, like, 1st or 2nd, right?
Yes.
And I think that's, like, actually a huge part about why I think, for example, Rogue might make Worlds, is because, like, even if they fall off, they will just... from the current standings, they're in a good position. Same with Fnatic, same with, I mean, OG as well. I mean, G2 is like in a bit of a rougher spot, but I think G2 is looking better than the other teams. So I think they have a more, like, greater chance of, like, just picking it up again and just winning everything, right? So I think I have the least worries about G2. Like, I have less worries about, like, Rogue as well. I mean, Fnatic has a pretty good standing, right? OG has a pretty good standing. I think what I'm most worried about, like, and teams which I don't think will make Worlds is like SK and Misfits. I think SK is looking really good, but even then, I think they should not be able to beat other teams in a best of 5. I think most of their wins come like from
Twitch pick, shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, yeah. I think they have a, like, really good macro as well. Like, I actually was surprised how good their macro is. But I just don't think that their players are just better than other teams' players, right? Like, I think they have, like, good players, but I don't think they have players that can beat players from other top teams, right? Like, that's basically it.
If you put, like, Gen X versus Alphari and you're comparing, because those are the teams in, like, the same standing, it's like, all right, there might be some gap there. I mean,
if you put anyone against Alphari, I think that's kind of the case right now. But I think, like, with time, I think SK, for example, next split maybe, I think I mean, of course, like, they're already looking strong, right? But I think especially next split, maybe they will just become even better. And I think then they maybe become a worse contender, right? But I think right now it's just between us, G2, Fnatic, OG, and Rogue. I would say. Like Misfits is like a decent team, but I think just because like their games just look so messy and like sloppy against like, for example, against Fnatic, right? Like I'm not sure how you lose these games, right? And just because of that, I'm just counting them more or less.
Yeah,
like, I'm not sure.
I'm kind of the same. I mean, to go back to your question, Thorn. I mean, the problem isn't that I'm like super confident in Fnatic. It's just that when I'm comparing like Fnatic to the other teams in that bubble, like if I'm not saying that Fnatic is gonna make Worlds, right? That means that I either have to say OG, Misfits, SK, Vitality, or XL is making Worlds instead. Like that's like the only possibilities, right?
Yeah,
and when I compare all those teams, it's like the best shot I think that they have is like OG versus Fnatic. And when it comes down to it, if those teams play a best of 5 for Worlds, it just feels like OG is never the clutch team, right? Like historically in EU, OG is never the team that like when you put them like to the challenge, they overperform and they exceed expectations and like, you know, claim a victory. It always feels like they're the team where it's like, oh, they're pretty good, and then you get them into the best of 5 and they do nothing and fucking lose. So for me, I'm just like, if I were to bet on it, you know, I would just say that like, yeah, Rogue, MADLIONS, and then G2, I just give them credit because I don't see a world where G2 doesn't make like Worlds for me. That'd be just insane to me. And then Fnatic over OG is just how I predicted. Are you in the same camp, Thorn, or would you go Origin if you're going top 4?
I don't know, because the problem is, like, I also am not a big Origin believer, but like they already did look better with Jack Troll. They weren't even terrible before. They still would steal wins here and there that just didn't make sense, like I said, against some of the way better teams. I think my problem with that one, is the best of 5 angle is that you have to basically win a playoff series against someone. So I don't know, that's a tough one to call right now. Fnatic Origin would probably be a close best of 5.
Yeah, I would love to see it. But I mean, yeah. Do you? If you're a betting man, which one are you going with, Thorn? If you have to pick one,
I would probably put my money on Fnatic. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
If I have to bet the money.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good thing to just have in the books. You know, all of our predictions here, at least at this point, of where we think these teams are going to line up. So we talked about it briefly in this last in the last segment, but yeah, I want to get into it more in depth. Is the whole discussion about Alphari, because on the show we've had a lot of talks about Arome versus Alphari, and just in general, not necessarily just or I think you pronounce it Arome, but in general, just all the weak side top laners that are on these top teams, or like even if they're not top teams right now, teams that have been competing. So like when you look at Misfits, you have Dan.
It's just the West, if you look, dude. Like for some reason in like LPL and LCK, they still have loads of fucking sick carry top laners that are monsters. But if you look in LEC and LCS now, the best teams, all their players just are the weak side player. Like there's the best top player, because someone has to be the best out of the 10, but almost nobody's like really playing carries that much. Like someday maybe, and even then that's like half the debate about 100 Thieves. So right now the West doesn't seem to use top lane in that kind of way.
Yeah, and just more specifically is like when you look at the teams that used to dominate, in the conversation that we were having last split, like if you look at spring of 2020 in LEC, if you ask people, who are the best 3 top laners in Europe, it almost unanimously would have been Alphari, Bwipo, and Wunder. Like that's what everyone would have said.
Maybe Cabashard if people want to debate that. Like Vitality was decent, but those are pretty much the players.
Yeah, but I'm saying for last split specifically, so 2020.
Last split. I thought you meant last year, right? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. So last split, like those are the 3, and right now, like those teams are all kind of struggling. I mean, they're lower than the teams that have the weak side top laners. Do you think that it's just chance, or there's just like an RNG element why these teams aren't performing, or do you think that there's something like valuable about actually having a weak side top laner? Because most people that we've had on this show are kind of in the same camp of like, yeah, if you had MADLIONS, you replaced Arome with Alphari, they'd instantly be a better team. But we've had Karzi and other people on the team obviously like say that Arome provides a lot to the team, etc. We've seen similar things with Rogue and Finn. What's your perception on like this weak side top lane thing, the like discussion that we've been having on these shows, and like how do you compare somebody like Alphari to Arome, etc.?
Well, I think especially in our team, I think it was really important that Arome, like I think we could have like used him as a carry as well, right? But I think it was like important that he like I wouldn't say like took a step back from like carrying because like he was still like playing carries and scrims, and like we even like for example in summer right now, like we put him on carries as well, and he was performing insanely well as well, right? So I think, but just at the start, I think we just had to have like a clear direction, because it's kind of hard to play 2 or 3 different styles as a rookie team, because like if you have to switch from like one style to the other, like even though you haven't even mastered one style yet, then it's like just kind of it just doesn't work, right?
Yep.
So we had to kind of decide on one style, and we just wanted to use us as a bot lane as a strong side, because we just could not play a weak side, because like we just always were super aggressive. We would always look for the 2v2. We just always said like, oh shit, they're diving us. Let's look for an outplay, right? Instead of sitting under our T2, right? Mm-hmm. Stuff like that. So it just us playing weak side just didn't work in the spring, right? So Rome just like stood up and like said, yeah, hey guys, I can play weak side, right? And he will just play like GP, stuff like that, right? And I think it's also better, I guess, in a way, because the top lane is not the most useful role right now, I think, compared to bot lane. Because of course, like Drakes are so important. Like you can't really split push or something. Like if you pick a carry top laner and third Drake or fourth Drake is spawning, and you can't team fight, then yeah, you just lost the game, right? Even though you have a stronger side laner, it doesn't really matter, right? Yep. So we kind of consciously had like this decision that we would pick us as a bot strong side, I guess. And I think it was like, for example, that's why I really value Rome highly, is because he's not afraid to like take one for the team, right? For example, if you put Huni in our team, or like I don't know, like the Shy or whatever, right? They would not say, yeah, I guess I'm playing weak side, right? They would say like, give me a fucking give me Camille and just let me carry, right? And then
you can curse on our show. Don't worry, don't worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he would just go Camille and run it down, or like we run it down bot lane, and then you have two side lanes running down, and then it will just be a total disaster. Like I would not even want to look the coaches in the eye if I saw our scrims with the Shy or like Huni, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I value Orom really highly, is because he can just take a step back and like know kind of what's best for the team, right? Mm-hmm. He's a really like selfless player as well.
So he's the guy that deserves the mid-split MVP, because he's the guy that is taking one for the team.
And sleeper MVP, yeah.
He's the sleeper MVP.
Doing all that.
He's a shadow carry, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, he for sure deserves like a lot more recognition that he gets. That's for sure. Because like I feel like in social media, especially, they just don't understand the concept of weak side. They think when Orom is dying on side lane, he's just bad or like whatever, right? Even though it's like a conscious decision. Like that's what I like about Orom as well. Like for example, other top laners, they don't even know what's going to happen in the next like minute or something. They just die, you know. But Orom, like he says, if I die on top lane, can you get more? Then they will get, right? And that's what's like really important, right? Because like he values like how much his life is worth, and if it's like worth less than we would get on the other side, then he just like gives it up, right? And even out of game, I think he has like a strong voice in our team. Like he always, I mean, we are like a team of tilters in a way. I mean, not really tilters, right? Like we have a lot of fun, but like when something goes wrong, we have like a few players who always like, yeah.
Is Humanoid really that negative? Every MADLIONS player we have on the show just tells us about how Humanoid is like, you know, he's saying that you guys are going to lose every game, or like you get into scrims and it's just like, oh, okay, well, like, can we have F15? Is he actually that negative, or is that just a meme?
I mean, at the start he was like pretty bad, I would say, but I think he bettered himself. I think, I mean, maybe it was because we were getting better as well, because at the start he was always really tilted at us because we made the most like, retarded mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. Like we were hitting mid tower when we had no wave or whatever, right? Like we just made the most retarded mistakes. But as we got better, as he like saw us get better, and as he saw that we applied the stuff he and the coaches taught us, as we applied that stuff, like he just got like less tilted and stuff like that, right? And then it just worked out more. But of course, like we still get tilted. We get heated arguments in scrims, right? When we see that something is wrong, and Orom is like trying really hard to like be the mediator in a way, that he like that we don't get so mad at each other that we just want to FF the next game already, like in draft or whatever, right? So I think he's like doing a really good job as well at that, just like keeping us, I guess, happy, right?
Who the fuck's this guy getting all angry anyway? He's only been in the league himself for 1 year. He was a fucking rookie. He's like me when I moved to Amsterdam, and about a month later, I was doing that ridiculous cliched shit, like when some annoying people like getting away, like fucking tourists, get out the fucking street. Like, even though that was like you a month earlier, you know, like.
I mean, to be honest, I can understand him, because if I saw myself play, or like me and Kazi play, or like everyone actually play in the team against our, like, I mean, SES Academy scrims or whatever, right? Like, I would just get tilted at myself for sure as well.
Mhm.
But I mean, of course, like it takes a certain personality as well to like get tilted at that, right? But I think I kind of understand it, right? So
Yeah.
and it's kind of hard to like not like or like to change your personality over like a month or something, right? I mean, I think he got a lot better with that. Like, I think he gets way less tilted even if you make mistakes. And I think it's just, great.
Yeah, it makes sense. Also, like, Thorin, you got to consider how insane this guy's ego must be. In his first year, he went to Worlds, right? So the trajectory, and then now he's on like the team that's like one of the best teams, and he's looking like a top 2 mid laner in the split. So I mean, those EU egos get out of insane pretty quick.
Listen, I imagine he's probably even deluded enough to believe he actually really made top 8, not just literally won like the fucking lottery of all lotteries with that group draw. That was the most insane. Like the idea, dude, that they came as the bottom seed and got that group is like what? Like is this like it was like we're all the TSM groups just to make this group possible for the West? Like what is this shit? Like that was outrageous, mate. That group they got.
I mean,
but
I don't
to
know.
Be fair, they took a game of T1, right? So it wasn't exactly.
Who gives a fuck? First of all, they didn't. That was the game where T1 literally put in a different support player. So shut the fuck up, Kaiser. Secondly, they did that just to give Kaiser a win at Worlds. Like that's literally like at that point. Mata, sorry, yeah. At that point in time, it's almost like some fucking Make-A-Wish Foundation shit. Like, oh, come on now. Oh, little Jimmy here. Can then someone hold up Jimmy? Oh, look, he just shot it right in Michael Jordan's face to mid the bottom. Did he though? Did he really do any of that? I think if Michael Jordan turned himself loose, he'd slash it in Jimmy's face and go get the fuck. So I know what you mean, Kaiser, but I don't think it counts.
I have to defend it again because Mata, I think I watched that game and I think Mata was actually playing the best out of anyone in that game, and I think Humanoid really smurfed it in that game. So I think that does not really like count. I think they actually legitimately won that game. Of course, like you can say they have an easy group or whatever, but I think like getting top 8 at Worlds is like, especially with like a rookie in Milan, right? I think it's impressive.
And we heard from Peter Dunn, J Team was, better than Team Liquid and all those other teams in Group D. So, that is saying something. People just didn't watch J Team and they just didn't know the strength of the Taiwanese region.
That's true as well. Like, I mean, people always underestimate Valky's regions. I mean, I wouldn't say people underestimate NA. I think it's pretty fairly rated, but yeah.
I mean, that's something we could jump into because you actually, we talked and you actually watch NA. What do you think about like the fiesta it is our region? Like, I mean, obviously Cloud9's dropped a couple games recently. Team Liquid, I am super critical of these guys, and I always compare them to your team. Whenever I talk about Team Liquid, I'm like, if these guys played against MADLIONS, they would lose in fucking 15 minutes because of like jungle difference. How do you view like our region? Like, what do you think the problems are? Do you think it's just like bad play everywhere? Do you think it's mechanics? Do you think it's just everything? Like, how do you analyze the games as somebody from EU on a top team?
I'm not really sure what to say because I feel like every second game is just I don't certainly like I have no clue what's happening because like I watched this like Dignitas game where they had like 4 kills at the end of the game.
Dignitas versus Golden Guardians? Oh god.
Yeah, something like that, right? And it just nothing happened. Like they were just chilling, I guess, and waiting for the 30-minute power spike of like Kog'Maw Lulu or something. I'm not sure what happened there, but it was just mind blowing, right? Because I feel like most NA teams just don't know how to play the map. They don't know how to play like a mid game, stuff like that. I think like some teams know how to play the early game, right? They know how to snowball, but I think like it still takes like 50 minutes to end the game. Like you don't really often see that in EU. I think like most teams actually know how to snowball. Okay, I can't even say that with like Misfits versus like Fnatic and stuff like that.
That was a one-off. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2 or 3 or 4.
In general.
I don't want to look. Yeah, I mean, but in general, for sure, like I think the teams are maybe less coached. Like I'm not sure if it's like a coaching issue or it's just a player issue. But I think, for example, NA rookies are actually not looking that bad. I think, for example, Blava, I'm not sure where he came from, but I think like this guy's actually a solo key. I mean, this guy's actually insane. I reminds me a lot like of Shadow with his like decent mechanics. Like actually he plays like just every champion kind of role. Like he pops off on Kindred and stuff like that. Like even in Vulcan is also NA, right? Licorice is NA. I think they have like actually a lot more talent than they think they do, and I think if they gave more rookies a shot, I think they would be a better region as well. But I would say that you can't just fit in rookies everywhere and expect it to work. I think you have to have like a coaching staff around it as well. And I think right now I just don't really see that happening. I think like most teams are actually just not that good macro-wise. So yeah.
I think the problem that happens, you were talking about it a little bit earlier with how MADLIONS would coach you guys, and you guys would have, you know, like kind of a plan for the week. Like, this is what we're going to try to improve on. We need to improve, you know, the Herald swap or some concept like that, right? And then you'd hammer those out, and then you'd understand the concept and move on. The problem that I've seen in NA, and even in teams that I was in way back, but even in teams that I've seen recently, is that there's this issue where they'll learn a concept and they'll get better at it for a week, but then everything else that they know will get worse, right? And then it's always like this struggle with, how do you remember like all the stuff that you learn and actually progress as a team? Do you think it's just like the way your coaching staff was able to like build things that make sense on top of each other, so you guys were learning like similar concepts, or like how do you think that you guys were able to improve so steadily macro-wise? Because a lot of the teams in NA will like have the same philosophy, like, oh, plan for a week, trying to get better at certain concepts, and then it always ends up like hurting other parts of the game. So like, how did you guys end up, you know, making it work for you? Because it's not a new concept.
Actually, that's actually a good question, because I think we had that trouble as well, that we sometimes just forgot about stuff. That, for example, we had like 1 week where we were like training to get like vision control in the river, for example, right? And then we just totally forgot about like preventing dives on top lane, for example, right? Stuff like that. It just happened, right? And I'm not really sure what like happened, but like at some point we just like, maybe we designated like some people to, for example, I really stepped up, I think, in that way, that I just made it my routine, I guess, to always go through mid lane, for example, or like always try to get vision when I know the enemy jungle is on top side, for example, stuff like that, right? Like everyone just made their part of the, I don't know, like what they had to do, kind
like
of a responsibility, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Like, for example, Orome calls a stack wave, and then he calls Shadow there, right? We didn't have that at the start, but like once, for example, Merrick's blamed us, or like once the coaches blamed us, then we would just like do it, right? Because we just knew what we had to do. So I think it's like mostly on the players to just like memorize it and like make it into their
and that's something that came
like,
from you
into
guys.
Their habits, right?
That came from you guys rather than the coaching staff. The like idea of like accountability or assigning the special like you know, those little, you know, snippets where it's like, okay, so my job is to, you know, like call out these types of things or like look for these types of things in game. Did you guys kind of just figure it out naturally, or did somebody have to go through and assign like?
I mean, it's kind of natural, right? Because like vision control should be the support's jb. It's not really, or like support jungle's job, right? It's not really the AD carry's accountability. So it's of course like for us it was like kind of obvious what we had to do, work on, and like what each individual had to do. Of course, the coaches helped us. Like when I was like, what am I doing still wrong? Like I can ask my coaches that, and they can like find 2 or 3 things, right? And I just improve on it. And I think we did that like a lot in spring as well, or like even before the split started. And I think that's why we got a lot better faster, right? Because we were just really hungry to improve. I think that's like also a boon what most rookies have over veterans, is that they're really hungry to get better. And I think because we had that hunger, I think we just got better really fast.
Yeah.
Or like more quickly than other teams, right?
Yeah.
Also helps to have a whole bunch of rookies at once, not just one guy. Because that's one of the problems I think some of the LCS teams have, is like, what do you do if you're a team that's working with like imagine being the coach of Team Liquid. So they've got like super veteran Impact who played like the entire history of League of Legends. Jensen's basically been a mid lane as a start in NA for years now. I'm sure has his own vision of the game. And then you're trying to bring in fucking Tactical's a brand new player, basically, and then Brox is coming from a different region. Like, that's a really hard scenario to coach. So you're not even coaching 5 players start at the same spot. Whereas I'd imagine, like, teaching these concepts, if you're teaching everyone at once, that's going to have more of an impact than, like, one guy, and then what do the others do?
Yeah.
Not listen, or they know it differently from when they learned it at a different time. It's got to be tricky, I'm sure.
Actually, that's a really good point, because I feel like it's just like a kind of like the coaches are like doing a painting, or like painting a painting, right? And we are just kind of like this whiteboard where you can just paint everything you want on it, right? Like we are just like we
fresh
exactly
canvas.
And like most of the veterans, they already have like some colors on it and stuff like that, right? So they are like they're already tainted, right? Yeah. And you can't really change a player like 180, right? Like there's no way a double lift is gonna like change his ways, or like of course there is a way, right? But
it's just less likely.
Yeah. Exactly, and it's also not as likely that they will like pick up new strategies or like be as hungry and stuff like that, right? I mean, of course it depends on the player. There are like exceptions, right? But overall, I think I've seen that from like most veterans and rookie comparisons, right? That the rookies are always like more willing to change, more willing to adapt to like new play styles, new meta, stuff like that, right? So
yeah, and also I think that part of it is the fact that our teams, like there's more teams in Europe that are willing to go with like completely new rosters. Essentially, they'll keep like maybe 1 or 2 players from the old roster, but when you look at NA teams, it's normally just changing like 1 piece or like maybe 2 pieces, but you still have like a really like solid foundation of what the team was. So the identities of the teams don't change that much from split to split, because you already have like the way they kind of view it as, okay, we have this working for us and we just need to fix like X problems. So they plug in 2 new players and it's like, oh, well, our team is too passive. Like, let's try to add some aggression. Or they add in 2 aggressive players, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the team is suddenly going to function better, because, the game isn't just 1-to-1 like that. You can't just plug any player in that's supposed to have a strength over another player and assume that that's going to like directly impact how the team functions.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, that's like the thing with the Orom Alfari discussion as well. Like, I don't think we would like be like as strong with Alfari. Like, I mean, I'm not sure like if it would change, or like I'm not sure, like, right? But I think like from the start, I think we would be stronger than with Orom, just because like he like helped us out a lot. Like he's just like a really like strong weak side player, and like we are trying to implement like more strategies with him as well now, and it's working out. So yeah, I think that's like good idea. I mean, not idea, but sentiment.
Yeah, sure, definitely. And go for it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, what I want to say is like this also carries not also only to like EU, because like EU has always how do you say, they have like a few rookie teams, right? Mm-hmm. And they have been performing pretty well, right? Like Rogue was a rookie team, we were a rookie team, but it's also like V5 in LPL. They were like, I think they were like last place, and they changed 4 players, and all of a sudden they beat the first undefeated, like first place team undefeated, the TES, right? And they're like 3rd place performing now, right? I think like changing a lot can be really good, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean you should always do it, right? Like you can't just play,
of course,
put like 4 random players in and expect like to be like, I don't know, Gen G or whatever, right? So yeah.
So one player I wanted to ask you about specifically from NA is someone who kind of people would draw some comparisons to, which is Ignar. We've heard a bunch of different things about him, but he's the other guy that plays a fuck ton of Rakan. Similarly, I mean, you haven't been playing that much Rakan this split, but last split you played a ton of Rakan. And the Pantheon support is something else that he's bringing out every single game. I don't know if he's inspired by you or Beryl or who exactly for that pick, but like, do you have any? I mean, I don't know if you ever scrimmed him when he was in EU last year. I know you were playing with Mouse.
I don't think so.
But like, do you have any opinions on Ignar, like his play style, his champion pool, anything like that?
I mean, I heard Vulcan talk about him in like a podcast or something, and I think he had like a pretty good assessment of him. In that he said he puts his team always in a like really bad spot because he's always looking for flank, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of true, because like I think Ignar, he's always looking for it, and I think once you're always looking for it, it's not going to be like a surprise anymore for the enemy team. It's also like going to be like, it's really predictable, right? And once you become predictable, and like coaches from other teams like scout you out, they will just say, just engage on the 4 and mid lane, right? Just don't care about Ignar like flanking like your red buff area, right? Mm-hmm. Just engage on the AD carry mid lane because he's bluffing, right? And I think that's like become like a weakness of FlyQuest. I think Ignar is for sure like one of the better players on the team, but he's like not without fault, right? Like, you can argue that he has to play like that because he's on a weaker team, kind of. Like he doesn't have the like as good teammates as, for example, C9 has, or like even Team Liquid, right? He doesn't have the mechanical players like that. But I think he should also like think about like he's becoming predictable, right? So he has to change something.
I've got an analogy for you, because basically there's a very similar thing happening in Counter-Strike that I can give people as an example here, because the point you made at the end there is the key one, in my opinion, is people will say, but Ignar's always on not that good teams, so he has to do that to give you a chance to win, which, by the way, is the same logic everyone used for every Hylissang until this split. Until this split, we always had to say, well, that's what you take, that's the cost of having all the genius plays he makes. The point now is, though, now he's just doing bad ins. Like, now it's not like you have to take those to get the good players. Like, actually, some of these you'd want Hylissang not to go for. They're just objectively bad players. So similarly, I would say, I think it's a mixture of like that, and also that's why he's always on bad teams. It's like he himself is a limiting factor to his own career that people put. I think if you put him on a top team, first of all, you wouldn't see him just pull out like 5 new supports. He would keep playing all the same shit he does now. He would keep doing the same stuff he does now because he actually, I think, genuinely thinks that is the best way to play the game, Kaiser. Remember, this is the only guy during the fucking ardent censor memo was like, actually, you know what? Not for me. He was like the fucking Drake meme, like, nah, actually, ardent censor, nah. Why would I want to play that? Make it impossible to lose the first 20 minutes. I'll just go for this Thresh pick out of nowhere. Because I always tell people that. They didn't win the series everyone credits them for. People act like on their resume it says almost beat SK Telecom. Listen, there's a fucking million people have got almost beat SK Telecom. It's whether you did it or not, it actually means something. Like, their accomplishment is what? They almost won top 4. Like, what? So my point is this, right? In Counter-Strike, we had a similar couple of players who had this problem. There were these really legendary players who played what used to be called the lurker role. So you're going to see the similarities here. So there were 2 players. Like, one was called Get Right. He's a very famous Counter-Strike player. And one isn't as famous now, but at the time he was a major champion. He was a guy called Happy. And both these players, right, had a really amazing intuitive feel for when to, like, flank in Counter-Strike. Like, when to just come, when you're on the, this is usually on the defensive side, when you can basically just come all the way behind the opponent and he's just about to attack you on the bomb site, but you're just there already, or you're like picking off somebody who's trying to rotate, right? And these players were so good at it, they basically just started doing it all the time. And for maybe, let's be reasonable, let's say they had like 8 months, a year where this worked. They were like, their teams were the best in the world. But the problem is, they then had, I'm not exaggerating, like 2 years each where they just kept doing it, even when people figured out what you're saying, like what the appropriate counter is. And what they never got was this. Yes, that is their strength. So they shouldn't go away from it completely. To do that would be foolish. It should be a way worse player. But you have to not do it all the time. Otherwise, no one ever honors that it's possible, but like they don't look for it. They're just going to look for it all the time. So in Counter-Strike, I even told some of these players, because I was friends with some of them, dude, I talk to your teammates. They tell me in Counter-Strike equivalent, if they see you on your own, then they know the rest of the teams at the other site because you always lurk. So it actually made your team more predictable. Before, it made you less predictable because you were doing something that no one else does, basically, which means that now we have to think of both. Like, fuck, they could be here, but is he behind us? Like, you have to be worried about that all the time. What someone like Ignar doesn't get is you have to do it like 30% less, mate, and it will make the 70% of the time you do it more effective. Exactly. If sometimes they waste their time turning around and looking for you and you're not there, you've just probably won like a free time in the future where they will think, all right, maybe he's probably not. And then you've got the moment to do it. But like yeah, basically the premise is like, he doesn't understand, even if generally it's the right move, you can't do it 100% of the time because that actually reduces the efficiency way too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, go for it if you have a point here.
No, that's fine.
All right, so I wanted to just talk about the Pantheon pick because they picked it in games that it looked pretty awful in NA, whereas like I know you did an interview I watched it where you were talking about how like you thought that this champion is like pretty OP, like without counters, but obviously we know that that's like pretty much how Barrel uses it in LCK. Mm-hmm. Well, do you, when you see those picks, like for me, it looks awful, right? When I see like a Pantheon into whatever he played it into in C9, I don't know if it was like a Braum or whatever the fuck he played, or no, he played it into Thresh. That's what it was. When I see a Pantheon into Thresh, I'm like, how can this ever play the game, right? Like if you even try to W, you just get flayed out, and then you're just like in no man's land, and eventually you get hooked one shot with your E down, etc. Like, is this pick actually that strong? Like, are FlyQuest onto something and they're just like a worse team and not able to execute it? Or should it be used in like a niche situation?
I mean, I think the pick is pretty like, I would say like it's kind of like I mean, Pantheon's essence is kind of like, if you fall behind, you're kind of useless, right? Like you look like, why are you picking this champion, right? But if you're ahead, or like if you can snowball, then it's really good, right? Like it just looks really broken. And I think that's like mostly like because of the pick. I think it's pretty strong blind pick. I think it just doesn't really have any losing matchups. I think that champion is just
you can
like
play it into
really,
Thresh.
really strong. Yeah, you can play it into Thresh as well. I think like sure, Thresh has like some agency to play the game, right? Or like, I mean, he has lantern for your ulti or something. But like if you can actually like play around that, and if you don't just like brainlessly ult somewhere. I mean, I haven't seen the FlyQuest game where they got like smashed by Thresh or something, but maybe like play over aggressive or something. But I think if you play it correctly, I think even into Thresh you can just make it work.
Yeah, it wasn't even over aggressive. It literally looked like he just did nothing and lost lane. It was like him standing in the bush, and then the Thresh and his AD carry just playing up, and it literally looked like it was unplayable for the Pantheon.
okay.
So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like that's why I asked the question, is because from looks of it, I'm like, so can Pantheon just never actually engage and fight in lane versus a Thresh, because you're just gonna get flayed out of it every single time? He flays you out, procs aftershock. Like how can you even look for like trades in that lane?
I mean, like, you just have to be more creative, I guess. Like, you just don't just walk up to him and just like use W, right? Like, if you just like walk from base, go to the Thresh and just press W, of course he's gonna play, right? But you just have to. It's kind of like a mind game, right? Like, for example, that was like the same mind game with Alisa, and where like Thresh could, in theory, always play your W, but if you just like play around the edge of the play range, he will just play from the start, because like, you can't react to the stun, right? You have to like do it when he's coming into max. Exactly, like when he's coming exactly into your range, you play, right? But if you don't instantly like press your stun or your combo or whatever, and he just raises play, and then then you can actually one-shot him, right? Because he doesn't proc aftershock. He can't like do anything to prevent your like stun, right? And then he's just a sitting duck, right? So I think you just have to play it differently than into other like supports. Like, you just have to adjust your playstyle, right? Because I mean, Thresh is different in that way, because like there's not any other support that can really interrupt your stun, right? Like maybe Nauch the Sook or whatever, but even that is like fine, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to like change your playstyle. I think that's like a thing that comes with like matchup knowledge, right? Maybe Ignar just hasn't played into Thresh that much yet, so maybe he just doesn't know about it, but yeah.
Seems weird though, because he's like a Thresh main, so you'd think he'd know himself, right? But I guess if you never played it.
But I think like Pantheon has been like not non-meta for like so long.
Of course.
It just kind of became meta overnight, right? Rivera just picked it like all of a sudden, and now everyone's playing it. Or like not everyone, but like it's becoming more popular, right? So I guess he just hasn't played it that much yet.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, jumping back topic, something that I forgot to ask about. Well, there's two things. So number one, this is gonna be a very short answer, but number one, were you guys just scared of playing against me and Tyler One's Twitch rivals team? You know, when it came to that little scrimmage we were gonna have, because it seemed like you guys chickened out. Like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shadow, like he was, I think, underage at that time, so we didn't want to like
traumatize the kid.
Exactly.
Okay, that's one thing.
Okay.
But I on a serious note, I think we couldn't do it because it was just not allowed by LEC, I think, or something. I think it was like with broadcasting rights, or like, I'm not sure.
Wouldn't be the first time Riot fucked with Dom, believe it or not, in our fairly short careers.
I don't remember what you could be possibly talking about, but it's one serious question I wanted to ask was about some of the players that you played with in MOUZ, and you know, Gen X now we've seen become a top laner. He was a mid laner going to top lane. You're a mid laner going to support, or you were a mid laner going to support. We've heard a bunch of people that play in the LEC were originally mid laners. So is it just that mid lane is just that stacked in Europe that everyone is actually a mid laner? And then, you know, even Shadow, people tell me it plays a fuck ton of mid lane in solo queue. Is it just that in Europe, everyone just wants to be a mid laner, and only like there's only 10 spots, so you guys just end up branching out to other roles? Or like, how exactly does it work? Because it seems like everyone has the same history there.
Well, I think like mid laner is just the most fun role. I think that's kind of, I mean, it's not objectively true, right? I think there's some metas where like mid lane.
It's just never the worst role. That's why I always say exactly. It might not always be the best, but it'll never be the worst. That's for sure.
I mean, it's always like top 1 or top 2, right? Like
yes, exactly.
It's always meta. It's always like you're in the middle of the map. You can play like Z, and like you can play everything. It's just super fun to play. So I think that's like most of the reason why I played mid lane. I think that's like why mid lane is so popular all over the world as well, right? I think mid lane is probably the most popular role in every region. I could be wrong. Maybe AD carry is a bit more.
Here's why mid laners should never ever complain. Because first of all, as I said, they can never say their role was the worst. That was never the case at any point in history. But even more than that, their version of complaining, like for at the moment, like it's just a boring meta where you just play these mages and like there's no kill pressure, and then you just farm up and then carry the game anyway. It's like, fuck you. Everyone who plays every other role is just like, if that's your complaint, fuck your role. Like if you complain at any other role, it's like, right, if top lane, I have to play tanks for 3 years or whatever. Like, if you're ADC, it's like, right, all I can play is Jin and Ashe for a year. Like, this is the kind of shit other people have to. Other people have real. The joke is this, right? The mid laners, like the fucking Westerner who lives in America, who's in on some college campus, complaining about some like imaginary problems. Every other role's like some guy who actually like he lives in like war-torn area, like fucking bad economy. They've got real problems. Like they're not just complaining about imaginary shit, guys. Like some people have real problems in this game.
I mean, it's actually true because like especially like for example top lane. I think after the Death Dance changes, maybe a bit before, like with Spear of Shojin, they actually had like some agency and the Conqueror changed it. But Riot actually had to like change it because like so many people were like complaining about it, right? And mid lane never had that before, right? Like mid lane had like some assassin changes, mage changes because like maybe they were too broken, right? Like for example, before assassins were changed, they would just one-shot everyone in like 0.1 seconds without counterplay. So they had to change it actually because it was too broken. I mean, same with like mages. Like, some of them are just like burst you down from like from 100 to 0, like nothing, right? Or like they had too much range or whatever, right? I think mid lane probably has never been like buffed or like anything, right? They have always been nerfed, and I think they even wanted to nerf mid lane in this season, but they cut back on it because of Worlds, because it would just change too much in a short period of time, right?
Yeah, they're
Dude, all that needs to be said is this. Mid lane is so OP that they can't even buff Lucian because it'll just be fucking mid lane again instead of AD carry. So it's like, that's how broken this role is. We're not even allowed to get buffs in other roles in case these fuckers just steal everything.
Yep. I mean, people. There was a point where they were nerfing Smite because all the mid laners were just taking like Smite every single game.
You know, people bring up that game every now and then, that Pepinero Giants game where he played Runeglaive Ezreal and did like 8 fucking million damage.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't. Listen, he was actually a pop-off player, so I'll give him credit. But that wasn't like it was. That wasn't like when Kobe scored 81 points. That was just an utterly broken champion in a meta where he just got it and it was just rolling. Like that shouldn't even count for anything. That one. Delete that game from history. Don't remember it. Delete it. There we go.
Yeah.
Starling it. Just get the whole shit out of there.
No, I mean, I just want to point out, because we were talking about like, you know, the bad periods of other roles. I just want everyone to remember at the beginning of Spring Split where junglers were literally lower level than supports and were giving every single camp to every lane. You know, that was something that happened. But
that was fun.
To go to your point about they're not being buffs for mid lane. There were buffs for mid lane this season, but everyone just kind of swept them under the rug and was like, oh yeah, I guess that doesn't matter, which was the experience changes where they made.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there's experience nerfs for jungle. I mean, essentially, if you share experience, you don't get as much as before. And then I think that.
Oh, yes, you can't tax basically.
Also the solo lane XP buff.
Yeah,
right? Like
and then solo lane's got experience buff too. That's huge.
Where like bot lane was like always 5 levels behind of the mid lane and top lane, right? Because we were side laning for 50 minutes and then you could just not play the game, right? So they would just 1v2 you every time.
Yeah, just the mid lane buffs are just like kind of sneaky and people just don't notice them. Like
those
aren't the attractive buffs, you know? Like when Death's Dance becomes super fucking OP and then you have an Aphelios like 1v4ing an LEC, then you're gonna start seeing like people complaining about shit. But like this buff that's like swept under the rug where it's like, oh, you guys are just going to be higher level than everyone else. People don't realize that that's like, wait, that's fucking OP. Being higher level than somebody else in a League of Legends match is just, yeah, that's like where you get the majority of your stats from. So, you know, I just didn't want us to let them get away with that on the show.
Yeah, I mean, good that you corrected me. But I think right now, I think the roles are like pretty balanced, to be honest. Like, I think even top lane can have its impact, like especially in competitive. I think like TP plays are like really important in this meta. Like, I mean, of course, like the main carry is the bot lane, right? Because there's like Drakes, you can swap for health, stuff like that. But that's like always going to be the case. And I think unless they change like the neutral objective, I think bot lane will just be OP, right? And there's no way to like change it, right? I mean, mid lane, jungle. I don't want to like say anything, but like I think those two roles are like pretty broken right now because like they just impact the map like on a whole like another level, I guess, because they can move into both side lanes. They kind of dictate the state of the game. AD carry is just like he has to take it. If he has a better team, then he might win. Of course, late game he can carry, but early game he's just like, yeah, whatever. I just like let my team carry.
Yeah. And
I mean, support is like pretty strong right now. I admit that. I think like you moving with your jungler area on the map is like really strong, and like no one expects it usually, and like especially in solo queue, right? So I think support's actually in a good spot right now.
Yep, makes sense. I mean, we normally at this point we normally open it up to the guests, see if there's anything that we missed on the show that you wanted to talk about in either EU, NA, about the game, anything. Yeah, the floor is yours. Do you have anything specific that we missed? I mean, up to this point, I think it's been a pretty solid episode. You can take a second to think if you want. I mean, floor is yours too, Thorin.
Problem you have to realize is Kaiser's not like a shit talker. He's the guy where, like, when I had him on the latest United Lighters episode, he was the guy who was like trying to find a reason as to why everyone's good, and it's maybe we're just not seeing what they do in their team or something. So I don't know. He's not going to have some like edgy topic to bring at this point in time.
Sure,
I don't feel like.
Sure.
What about? I've got a question for you. Who are actually the good bot lanes right now in LEC? Who's actually good for you in your money?
I think.
Comp and LeBron, are they underrated? You know, they got a lot of hype earlier.
Actually, I mean, Comp and LeBron are good mechanically, but I think that I don't want to say stupid, but they're stupid. Because,
okay.
In what way?
What
aren't they doing in the game that they should be?
I mean, I think like their macro is like sometimes a bit off, I guess. I mean, maybe it's like a team. I mean, of course, like you can never say like absolutes, right? Because the team can always impact your decision and stuff like that, right? But even they just sometimes look careless. I mean, especially, maybe it's just me misremembering stuff because of the Fnatic game, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Where like Comp or like even Lavrov actually just like ran it down mid lane for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I had with them, but I think like mechanically and stuff like that, I think they're really good. I think with time they can be one of the better bot lanes or like one of the best bot lanes even in EU. Aside from that, I think actually Axel bot lane is actually really underrated. I think Patrick and Tora are like really strong in lane. They always give us trouble kinda. And I think it's just unlucky that they're stuck with
special mid.
Like, I mean, not really, but it's just like I mean that they're better than their teammates. I'm gonna say that. And I mean, aside from that, I mean, Fnatic G2 bot lane, of course, they're always really good. And I mean, they're having troubles because I'm not sure why, but they're just having troubles. And but I think they will come back in playoffs. So I think those two bot lanes are really strong as well. I mean, OG bot lane, I think I still have to see more of them. Like, I can't really make a judgment right now. I think Upset is a like insane AD carry. Jack Troll was, I mean, he was always really underrated. I think like people gave him so much more flack than he deserved. And I think, I mean, I hope he can show it that he's actually like better than people give him credit for. And yeah.
Can you, all right, so I mean, that's one that I would push back on. Like, can you tell us like why you think he's so underrated? Because for me, he just looks like, so the what I said before is he's kind of like, hopefully for OG, it's like a positive inter. Like, he is going to like fight things, get caught, like force action, which could be useful for the team. But there was a lot of games with Vitality where it just looks like he has no concept of like where he can be on the map, and he would, you know, be Hillsong-esque in that way where it's like, all right, you are like sending it for the boys like really hard. So what's the advantage of him?
Yeah, but I think that's actually just what OG kind of needs, right? Because like I feel like they have really strong mechanical players, and I think they're like pretty smart about the game as well, right? But they don't really have anyone who like just starts the fight. Like he just goes in, you know. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need that, right? Because like sometimes there can be games which like are stalemates, right? And I mean usually like stalemates are like in favor of OG because they pick scaling, right? But like sometimes you can't stalemate a game because you're playing against Ocean Drake or whatever, or like Ocean Soul, right? Or like you get threatened by like Baron or whatever, right? And then you need like an inter, right? Or like I don't want to say inter because like Jack is not an inter, but
it's a positive
it's just
inter.
Like yeah, exactly, positive inter, who just goes in and like makes something happen, right? And I think some supports didn't have that, and or like in the league. I mean, Destiny sometimes did it, right? In Nautilus, he was like pretty good, right? But maybe he just didn't have the champion pool for like other picks, right? I think Jack Troll is just good in lane. I think he's like for sure better and more like aggressive, right? And I think aggression is actually what you need to be good in lane and like even out of lane. Actually, I think aggression is always the way. And I think that's why like Jack Troll should be pretty good for fit for that team because he's just aggressive, right?
Interesting.
We've only seen 1 week, so we can't really know either way, Dom. I would just say this. It's not actually true that everything Jack Troll did was bad. I actually know for a fact that he brought a lot of joy to a lot of Vitality fans' hearts. It's just that 5 seconds later when he told them, actually, I'm not Cabashad, he's Cabashad, that's when it would sort of like wear off a bit. So all I'm saying is there's positives. Everyone's got pluses. You didn't see where that was coming from, Kaiser. Listen, there's always an angle. There's always an angle. Understand that. There's always an angle.
Is there anyone that we should be looking out for? Any supports who you're like, oh, this guy's like, because from regional leagues, you know, I don't have much knowledge on regional leagues. Like I didn't actually know that you were Gistic, because I heard so much about Gistic from Veteran, and then, you know, you came in and it took me like a couple weeks in spring where I was like, wait, this is the same fucking guy. Holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
is there any like supports that you think really like should be looked out for? I mean, I think Denick is probably somebody who I would say like deserves.
Is there any like underground hype though in ERLs? Is there anyone everyone like bigs up at the moment?
I mean, I think the best one was obviously Lavrov. I think there's like maybe some hidden gems, maybe like Mystiques or something along those lines. Like, I haven't really followed many regional leagues. I usually only follow the German league, and the German league, I mean, they have some good supports, right? But I wouldn't say they're like exceptional. Like, I wouldn't say they're like LEC ready yet, or like maybe in a month or something. So I think right now it's maybe like Mystiques is the best out of LEC.
Actually, one thing we should ask you about before this episode ends is that's something else that people don't know. You know, I said that narrative that people had, which was like, who cares? Like, Fnatic and G2's got all the best players. Like, first of all, your team took everyone except the fucking Splice mid laner, so you didn't take any of Fnatic and G2's players, but you're ahead of them now. And secondly, if people don't know this, like, Kaiser didn't even get the tryout from OG. They chose to take Destiny without even giving this guy a tryout. So, like, I don't want to hear anyone telling me now, like they all will, like, Ashred, he was really good before. Like, those are like those fucking people on Twitter who say stuff like, I said that stock would go up, and you're like, how much money did he make? Well, I didn't buy any of it. I just said it would. Like, your opinion means nothing then. So, like, in this case, dude, you had so few teams trying to get you. Like, don't you find that kind of whack?
Nah, to be fair, I was the one who, I mean, didn't decline, but I just didn't have time for the tryouts, so okay. I couldn't. So it was not Origin's fault, but yeah, I mean, it was just like my fault, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but where were all the other teams trying to scout you and get you when you were like, the whole point of your team is most of those players were at the ERL level last year. Like, it's not like you were all hidden somewhere. People just don't pay attention to ERLs.
I think they do, because I mean, I actually got like a lot of offers, but I just chose my lines because I knew that Kazi is insane. Because I mean, I played against him. I played a bit with him. For example, in Mousebots we tryouted, and Kazi actually wanted to learn from my previous AD carry Conjo, or like Asa now. So I played with him a bit, like in tryouts, and he was like already insane there. So I knew I would have like an insane AD carry. Then I knew Shadow from Mousebots, right? And Shadow told me like he was probably gonna go to MADLIONS as well. Then Orome, I didn't really know much about Orome, but I heard some good things about him from Kazi, from Shadow, because they played with him already, right? And people were saying he's the best top out of AC, so I just thought that MADLIONS have like the best roster. And I think what I heard from the coaching staff as well, like, I mean, Peter is always like that guy to like
develop players and stuff.
Develop players, right? And Mac, I didn't know about like Mac and stuff like, right? But I mean, what he did for us is like insane. I think just props to him, right? And of course, like Cast as well. Our whole coaching staff like did an insane job at like teaching us. So yeah, I made the right decision, that's for sure.
Definitely. I mean, when we jumped into that topic, it just like opened a whole goodie bag of things for me to go into. One of them is the person that I feel like no one ever talks about in LEC as far as supports, and even we don't talk about, is Vander, right? Like, Vander, I feel like he's been playing so well this split, but he never gets hype compared to other supports. And for my money, he's been like a top 4 support in Europe for pretty much every split he's been in the league. So what is it about him that makes people just kind of like forget him or not give him as much credit as he deserves? Because for my money, he's been the second best support in Europe this split.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I think Vander has been like insane for Rogue. I think him and Larsen are just like the driving force, I guess, in the team. Like, whenever he's like, I mean, he just knows where to be on the map. He like plays it mechanically like really well, right? Like, people often joke about like Vander not having hands, or like just being too old to play League of Legends or whatever, right? But like, he's showing really
fuck
like,
those people. That's
exactly, like you can be a boomer but still play like a zoomer, right? So I think Vander is just really good right now. So I mean, I think people are just like counting him out because he's, I don't know how old he is, but like he's probably 25, 26, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
and he's
Imagine being
been
25. That's so old.
I didn't want to jab at you, but
Yeah, I'll be
like,
30 in a month. It happens.
At least you know the player, right?
Yep,
No, but
true.
wait, what did I want to say?
Just maybe about like what stands out about him, like what are like the parts that people miss about Vander that like makes him, is he just like super smart about the game, just good understandings in the right places at the right times, pretty much what keeps him like so solid in the league, I guess.
I mean, it's just he doesn't really have that many weaknesses. Like for example, you can point out 10 weaknesses for Phyllisang, right? But Vander, he's really good macro-wise. I think he just understands what his role is in the team as well. Like for example, I often see them like shadowing Larsen, for example. Like they know that Larsen is their win condition usually, right? So they just play around him completely, right? For example, he roams to mid lane really often. Like he just knows like what he has to do, right, to win the game. And of course, mechanically, like he might not be like better than Mickey or Healy, right? But he's for sure like not a bad player, you know. Like he's for sure like good enough to play.
His
like,
level's pretty consistently high, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Like he can for sure like compete with other top tier supports, right? And he shows that in lane as well, right? So, like Rogue is never like on the like they never really lose lane or whatever, right? I mean that's also credit to Hans Hammer, right? He's really good AD carry as well. So I think as a whole, like their bot lane is pretty good.
By the way, obviously Vander plays now with one of your former teammates, Inspired, as a jungler from years back in the day. Like, what do you have any thoughts on Inspired? Because he's a player obviously people still don't know that well. What do you think of him?
I mean, Inspired in our team was always like this kind of carry guy who always picked Kindred Grace, stuff like that, and just popped off, right? With Rogue, he kind of changed into a more supportive playstyle probably because of Larsen, right? I think they made him play these supportive styles, and I think I saw like an interview where he said like he wants to play carries, of course, but it's just better for the team if he doesn't, or like if he plays supportive. And I think he actually is super smart about like how to play tanks. Like when I see him play Trundle, like he never gets like caught or like he never like gets hit for 3 damage or whatever, right? He always plays around his pillar, and I think that's like insanely smart. And I never see like other people do that. I think most people just play Trundle in, like they just go in or like whatever and just get hooked or insta die and stuff like that. But I think he always plays it really, really smartly. And I mean, we haven't really seen that much from him this split because he was always on like Trundle and set duty, right? But I think he can carry as well if they want to. So I think he's like a really insane player.
Yeah, I think that it's something that people kind of ignore, but the difference between like understanding the range of your like your engage range and like when you're going to be taking free damage, like how to link really with your backline and understand when they can damage and like, you know, kind of staying like yo-yoing with them is the term I use. Really.
Exactly.
When your carries can walk up, you walk up with them, and then when they have to fall back, you fall back with them. We've seen like, you know, people that are really good junglers. Like Razork looks really good in the early game, but I mean, a lot of that Misfits throw I put on him because of, you know, him just like set ulting into the whole enemy team. He's got a Kalista, no way to follow up at all, and then he just dies for free, and suddenly like the whole game is changed. Or he's like forcing his laners to walk through Orianna Ball to even get to him, which is just like just being able to have the team fight vision is actually so important when you're playing tanks. So I do think that Inspired is underrated in that regard.
That's also like a big part about why like Larsen is also looking like good in team fights, right? Is because he has a good front line. I think like Finn, Vander, and Inspired really know how to play frontline, and I think that makes like Hans Hammer's and Larsen's job like 10 times easier as well. Like if you don't have an inting frontline, like if anyone has ever played like AD carry, and if you have an inting frontline, you just can't play the game, right? Like you can't walk up. Like it's so hard to play, but like how Inspired plays like frontline and stuff is just insane, I think.
Yep, makes sense. All right, well. It was really good having you on the episode. I actually have to go here soon. I have a meeting, but I really appreciate all your insight. I was worried at first because a lot of times when you get rookie guests, you don't know like if they're gonna be like talkative or like how much insight they'll actually provide. But I think you did a great job on the show. I really appreciated everything that you talked about, and yeah, definitely thank you to all the fans that came out and watched this episode. We'll be on YouTube tomorrow, and next week on Wednesday there'll be another episode of The Crackdown. So thank you guys all for watching, and yeah, thank you for coming on, Kaiser. See you guys.
Thank you for having me.